You're not alone. But what if a 16-year-old girl managed to break into one of the most secure systems in the world? In this video, we're sharing the incredible story of how a teenage hacker cracked Apple's secure servers, proving that age is just a number when it comes to skill and courage. Before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss amazing true stories and tech breakthroughs. Let's get started, right now. The unlikely hacker. Sarah Chen wasn't your typical teenager. While her classmates spent their evenings on social media and watching movies, Sarah was diving deep into the world of computer programming and network security. Growing up in Silicon Valley, she was surrounded by tech culture, but her fascination went beyond the surface-level gadgets and apps that captivated her peers. Sarah had been programming since she was 12, starting with simple HTML websites and gradually working her way up to more complex languages like Python and C++. Her bedroom was filled with old computers she'd salvaged from garage sales and electronics stores, each one serving as a testing ground for her growing expertise in network security and penetration testing. What made Sarah particularly dangerous was her combination of technical skill and teenage determination. She possessed an almost obsessive attention to detail and an unwillingness to accept that any system was truly secure. This mindset would prove to be Apple's downfall. The discovery. Sarah's journey into Apple's systems began innocently enough. She was working on a school project about corporate cybersecurity when she decided to test some of the techniques she'd been reading about online. Apple seemed like the perfect target, not because she wanted to cause harm, but because the company prided itself on having some of the most secure systems in the technology industry. Using basic reconnaissance techniques, Sarah began mapping Apple's external network infrastructure. She spent weeks analyzing publicly available information, studying Apple's domain registrations, examining their web applications, and looking for any potential entry points. Most security professionals would have found nothing of interest, but Sarah's fresh perspective and relentless methodology revealed something others had missed. She discovered a forgotten subdomain that Apple had used for internal testing purposes. The subdomain was supposed to be decommissioned, but someone had failed to properly shut it down. Even more critically, this forgotten server was running outdated software with known vulnerabilities that Apple's security team had overlooked during their regular audits. The breakthrough. Once Sarah identified the vulnerable server, she began the careful process of exploitation. She wasn't interested in causing damage or stealing personal information. Instead, she was driven by the intellectual challenge of seeing how far she could penetrate into Apple's network without being detected. Her first breakthrough came when she successfully exploited a buffer overflow vulnerability in the server's web application. This allowed her to execute arbitrary code on the machine and establish a foothold within Apple's internal network. From there, she began the process of lateral movement, carefully exploring the network topology and identifying additional systems she could access. Sarah's approach was methodical and patient. She spent several weeks studying Apple's internal network architecture, documenting security configurations, and identifying the most valuable targets. She avoided any actions that might trigger security alarms, instead focusing on gathering intelligence about how Apple's systems were structured and where their most sensitive data was stored. Her biggest breakthrough came when she discovered that the compromised server had privileged access to Apple's internal development environment. This gave her access to source code repositories, internal documentation, and even early versions of unreleased products that Apple was developing. Inside Apple's vault. What Sarah uncovered inside Apple's systems was both impressive and worrying. She accessed unreleased product specs, internal emails on strategy, and source code for key operating system parts. The biggest surprise was how interconnected Apple's network was. Once inside, she easily moved across departments, revealing weak internal segmentation and access controls. Sarah carefully documented her findings out of curiosity, exploring Apple's development tools, executive communication systems, and financial plans. Importantly, she avoided customer data, focusing only on Apple's technical and business operations. The ethical dilemma. As Sarah's access grew, she faced an ethical dilemma. keep quiet and risk Apple being exposed to malicious hackers, or report the vulnerabilities and risk legal trouble. Though her intent was ethical, unauthorized access is a serious crime. After consulting ethical hacker communities, she learned about bug bounty programs and decided to responsibly disclose her findings. Sarah prepared a detailed report explaining the vulnerabilities, how she exploited them, and suggestions for improving Apple's security. The revelation: when Sarah contacted Apple's security team, they were skeptical, until she provided clear proof of her access with screenshots and technical details from inside Apple's network. Apple launched a thorough investigation, finding Sarah had been inside their systems for over 2 months, accessing multiple departments. The breach happened due to a forgotten test server, complex network links, and weak monitoring. Executives were impressed by her skills and ethical approach, but worried about the serious vulnerabilities she exposed. The aftermath: rather than pursuing legal action against Sarah, Apple chose to work with her to understand exactly how she had succeeded in penetrating their systems. Company executives recognized that prosecuting a teenager who had discovered legitimate security vulnerabilities and reported them responsibly would send the wrong message to the security research community. Apple invited Sarah to their headquarters in Cupertino, where she spent several days working with their security team to document the vulnerabilities she had found and provide recommendations for remediation. Her insights proved to be invaluable, as she had approached their systems from a completely different perspective than professional security auditors. The company implemented numerous security improvements based on Sarah's findings, including better network segmentation, enhanced monitoring systems, and more rigorous procedures for decommissioning test servers. They also established new policies for working with external security researchers and expanded their bug bounty program to encourage responsible disclosure of vulnerabilities. All right, that's a wrap on the unbelievable story of the 16-year-old who broke into Apple's secure servers. A reminder that determination and talent can come from the most unexpected places. If this inspired you, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts or stories in the comments. And for more powerful tech stories and incredible feats, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss out. Catch you in the next one.